China just sent a powerful signal to the global gold market, and it came from a number most investors probably overlooked. In July, the People's Bank of China added roughly 20 tons of gold to its reserves, extending its buying streak to 21 consecutive months. But here is what makes that number especially interesting. This was China's biggest monthly increase in nearly 3 years, even as gold had pulled back sharply from its earlier highs. So why would one of the world's largest central banks keep adding gold during a period when investors were questioning whether the gold rally had already gone too far? And more importantly, what could this mean for gold prices and for U.S. investors if China keeps buying? That's roughly 640,000 ounces of gold added to official reserves, a meaningful purchase by the same institution that has now been buying month after month for 21 consecutive months. Let's set the scene properly, because the timing here is the whole story. Earlier this year, gold surged to record levels above $5,500 an ounce. Then the market pulled back sharply through the spring and into summer. By June, gold had fallen significantly from its peak, leaving investors questioning whether the powerful rally had finally run out of momentum. Gold ETFs also came under pressure as some investors took profits or reduced their exposure. And that is exactly what makes China's latest purchase so interesting. And that is exactly the moment China's central bank, the People's Bank of China, decided to buy more gold than it had in almost 3 years. Now, before we go further, here's why this matters to you. Whether you own a single ounce of gold or none at all, central banks are, historically, some of the most conservative, risk-averse institutions on the planet. Central banks generally operate on much longer time horizons than individual investors. They aren't making reserve decisions based on a single day's headlines or price movement. But here's where everything changes. The buying didn't start big, it built. In March, the PBOC added a modest amount of gold. In April, the number grew. In May, it grew again. And by July, the central bank had added approximately 20 tons, its largest monthly increase in nearly 3 years, extending the buying streak to 21 consecutive months. Almost nobody noticed this happening in real time. It came out in a routine government data release, the kind of update that rarely makes the front page. But when you line up the monthly numbers side by side, the pattern becomes much harder to ignore. China wasn't simply adding gold once or twice. It had continued buying for 21 consecutive months, and July's increase was large enough to stand out from the recent trend. Every nation holds what's called foreign exchange reserves, a stockpile of assets, usually US dollars, US Treasury bonds, and a smaller portion of gold that a government keeps on hand to pay for imports, defend its currency, and survive financial shocks. For decades, the US dollar has been the undisputed king of that stockpile for almost every country on Earth, China included. But over the past several years, China has been quietly, deliberately shifting the mix. Even after 21 months of continuous buying, gold still represents a relatively small portion of China's total foreign exchange reserves. Now, here's the part most people miss. Think about what foreign exchange reserves are actually for. They're a government's insurance policy. If your own currency loses trust, if your biggest trading partner freezes your assets, if global tensions spike overnight, that reserve stockpile is what keeps your country's economy functioning. In U.S., Treasury bonds, while historically considered the safest asset on Earth, come with one specific vulnerability that gold does not have. They are, at the end of the day, a promise from another government. Gold is not a promise from anyone. It sits in a vault. It doesn't answer to sanctions. It doesn't depend on any nation's political stability. It requires no counterparty and no permission to be worth something. For a country that has watched other nations have their foreign-held dollar reserves frozen during geopolitical conflicts in recent years, that distinction isn't academic, it's existential. And some analysts believe that is precisely the calculation happening inside Beijing's reserve management offices right now, a slow structural rebalancing away from a system where your national savings can, in theory, be frozen by someone else's decision. Let's talk about the family on the other end of this story, because this isn't just a government spreadsheet exercise. Picture a retired factory worker in Shandong province, someone who spent 30 years watching the value of paper currency quietly erode through inflation. Who remembers what happened to household savings during past periods of currency instability? For families like that, gold has never been an abstract investment concept. It's jewelry passed down for weddings. It's the thing grandparents told grandchildren to always keep a little of, just in case. China's own citizens have been buying gold jewelry and gold bars at elevated rates, even as global investment demand cooled. A cultural instinct toward the metal that predates the central bank's own strategy by generations. In some ways, the PBOC isn't creating a new belief in gold. It may simply be catching up to one that was already there. Now, think about a completely different person, on a completely different continent. A 34-year-old software developer in Austin, Texas, checking his brokerage app during his lunch break, watching his gold ETF position sit deep in the red after months of steady gains. For him, The instinct in that moment is almost universal. Fear. Sell before it gets worse. Lock in what's left. That instinct isn't foolish. It's simply how most human beings are wired to respond to loss. But it's worth noticing that the instinct of an individual investor and the strategy of a sovereign central bank can point in exactly opposite directions at exactly the same moment, using exactly the same falling price as their trigger. One sees danger, the other sees a discount. Both reactions are understandable. Only one of them, historically, tends to be right more often over long stretches of time. Though, of course, past patterns never guarantee future outcomes. History tells a very different story than most people assume, and this is where the plot thickens. Rewind to the 1970s. The United States had just severed the dollar's direct link to gold, inflation was surging into double digits, and confidence in paper currency was cracking worldwide. Gold went from roughly $35 an ounce to over $800 an ounce within a decade, a move that shocked even seasoned investors who assumed gold was a relic of the past. That surge wasn't driven primarily by retail investors buying coins. It was driven by a structural loss of trust in currency systems and by central banks and large institutions repositioning their reserves. Nobody is claiming today's environment is an exact replay of the 1970s. The world economy is far more complex now, and inflation dynamics today differ in important ways. But the underlying mechanism, a sovereign institution rebalancing away from paper promises and toward physical metal during a period of currency uncertainty, historically rhymes more than people expect. There's another thread here that ties directly back to the title of this video, because China isn't just quietly buying gold, it's doing so while sitting on one of the largest foreign exchange stockpiles on Earth, valued at roughly $3.4 trillion as of the most recent reporting period. A shift of even a few additional percentage points of that stockpile toward gold represents a colossal amount of physical demand hitting a market that, relative to global bond markets, is actually quite small. Gold mining companies worldwide produce only a limited, fairly steady amount of new physical gold each year, when a buyer as large as a national government steadily and persistently absorbs a meaningful share. Of that limited annual supply, basic economics suggests it can matter for price dynamics over time, though exactly how much and how quickly remains genuinely uncertain and disputed among analysts. Now here's the part that should genuinely surprise you. China isn't buying alone. According to the World Gold Council's most recent central bank survey, released in the middle of this year, central banks around the world have continued expanding gold's share of their reserves, with a majority of surveyed reserve managers indicating they expect global central bank gold holdings to keep rising over the next 12 months. Poland, India, Turkey, and several other nations have been accumulating gold at notable paces of their own. This isn't a solo maneuver by one government. It looks increasingly like a broader shift in how the world's institutions think about safety. But here's the detail that almost nobody outside specialist trading desks has picked up on, and it's the kind of thing that changes how you read everything else in this story. Several major research desks, including analysts at Goldman Sachs and BMO Capital Markets, have suggested that China's actual gold accumulation may be significantly larger than what shows up in the official PBOC reserve reports. Because a meaningful portion of China's gold buying may flow through non-central bank channels, state-linked entities, and over-the-counter markets in London, rather than being booked directly onto the central bank's public balance sheet. One widely cited estimate places China's total above-ground gold holdings, including these unofficial and non-monetary stockpiles, near 30,000 tons, compared to the roughly 2,360 tons the PBOC officially discloses. To be clear, this figure is an analyst estimate, not confirmed government data, and it should be treated with appropriate caution. But if even a fraction of that estimate reflects reality, then the number everyone has been watching in the headlines, the official monthly PBOC figure, may be capturing only a small slice of the true picture. Think about why a government would want its buying to stay partly hidden from public view in the first place. If the world's second largest economy announced tomorrow that it intended to triple its official gold reserves over the next 5 years, that single announcement could move global gold prices dramatically overnight, making every future purchase dramatically more expensive. So instead, some analysts believe the accumulation may be deliberately spread across quieter, less visible channels, a strategy less like a single dramatic headline and more like a slow tide that's easier to notice in hindsight than in real time. Almost nobody noticed this happening until researchers started comparing customs data, trade flows, and refinery output against the official reserve figures and found the numbers didn't fully add up. This tiny detail changes everything about how you should read the headline number. It means the 21-month streak you keep hearing about in financial news might not be the main event. It might be the visible tip of something much larger happening beneath the surface of official statistics. A nation potentially repositioning a meaningful share of its long-term wealth into a physical asset it can fully control, largely outside the public eye. Now let's connect this to what's happening in your world right now, this month. On the first Friday of August, the U.S. government released its July jobs report, and it landed like a shock. Economists had expected the economy to add roughly 80,000 jobs. Instead, the country lost about 23,000 jobs, and the unemployment rate ticked up to 4.1%. Weak labor data like that historically increases the odds that the Federal Reserve will cut interest rates rather than raise them, because a cooling job market gives the Fed more room to support the economy without worrying as much about overheating inflation. And lower interest rates historically tend to be good news for gold, because gold pays no interest or dividend of its own. So when the returns on safer assets like savings accounts and bonds shrink, gold becomes comparatively more attractive to everyday investors and institutions alike. Let's widen the lens for a moment, because this story doesn't exist in isolation. Picture a young family in Ohio trying to save for a home down payment, watching grocery bills and mortgage rates climb. At the same time, their paycheck seems to stretch a little less every month. They're not thinking about central bank reserve allocation strategy. They're thinking about whether they can afford a starter home before rates move again. But these stories are more connected than they appear. When a government the size of China's spends 21 consecutive months signaling reduced confidence in paper currency systems, and when the Federal Reserve simultaneously faces pressure to cut interest rates because of a weakening job market, the two forces can compound each other. Lower rates can mean cheaper mortgages, which helps that Ohio family in one very specific way. But lower rates historically can also mean a weaker dollar and higher prices for imported goods and commodities over time, which can quietly erode the purchasing power of the very paycheck that families trying to stretch further. There's rarely a version of this story where every household wins on every front at once. Almost nobody connects a Chinese central bank filing to their own grocery bill, but here's where everything changes once you actually trace the chain all the way through. The Federal Reserve sets policy primarily around domestic conditions, inflation, employment, growth. But gold, unlike almost every other major asset, gets priced through a genuinely global tug-of-war between all the world's major economies simultaneously. When one of the largest economic actors on the planet consistently chooses to hold more of a scarce physical asset instead of paper currency, it can, over long periods, put a quiet structural floor under that asset's price, even during months when short-term sentiment is negative. That doesn't mean gold only goes up. It means the ground underneath the price may be shifting in ways that don't show up on a daily candlestick chart. Reality check, because we should be honest about the other side of this story. Gold does not move in a straight line, and nobody, including the world's best resourced analysts, can guarantee where it goes next. Just this year alone, gold soared to an all-time high above $5,500 an ounce in January, then fell more than $1,000 from that peak by June. Forecasts for the rest of this year vary enormously. Some banks, including Goldman Sachs, have maintained year-end targets north of $5,000 an ounce. J.P. Morgan's research team has floated the possibility of gold approaching $6,000 by year-end, citing continued central bank demand as a key pillar. But other analysts warn that a rebound in real bond yields or a de-escalation of geopolitical tensions in the Middle East, particularly around the Strait of Hormuz, could just as easily cap the rally or send prices sharply lower. Markets often react to short-term news in ways that have nothing to do with the longer, structural trend playing out underneath. Nobody watching this video should treat gold, or any asset, as a guaranteed one-way bet. It's also worth remembering that gold itself is only part of a much larger precious metal story unfolding at the same time. Silver, gold's quieter sibling, has been dealing with its own separate supply pressures, including tightening inventories in major COMEX warehouses, that some analysts believe could eventually create very different dynamics than gold's. These two metals often move together in the public imagination, but the forces driving them underneath the surface aren't always identical, and treating them as interchangeable can lead to costly assumptions. But here's where everything changes again, and it's worth sitting with this for a moment. Whatever happens to the price next week or next month, the structural story, a major government spending 21 straight months accumulating a scarce physical asset specifically because it does not trust relying entirely on paper currency reserves, is not something that reverses overnight. Central banks don't typically build multi-year accumulation programs and then abandon them on a single bad month of price action. Historically, once this kind of institutional repositioning begins, it tends to unfold over years, not weeks. So what does this actually mean for an ordinary person watching this video? Someone who isn't running a sovereign wealth fund or a hedge fund? It doesn't mean you should panic. It doesn't mean gold is guaranteed to make you rich. What it does mean is this. The institutions with the most information, the most resources, and the longest time horizons in the world are choosing, deliberately and repeatedly, to hold more physical gold, not less, even during a painful price correction. That is data. That is a fact. You can verify yourself through official government reserve reports. What you choose to do with that fact, as always, is entirely your own decision, and this is not financial advice. It's a pattern worth understanding. Think about a retired teacher in Florida, someone living off a fixed pension that doesn't automatically adjust upward every time prices at the grocery store creep higher. For someone in that position, the debate over central bank gold buying isn't an abstract macroeconomic puzzle. It's a direct question about whether their savings will still buy the same basket of goods 5 or 10 years from now. Historically, gold has functioned as one of several tools people use to try to preserve purchasing power over long stretches of time, particularly during periods when currencies lose value faster than usual. It has never been a perfect tool, and it has gone through long stretches, sometimes a decade or more, where it underperformed other assets significantly. But the fact that the same government, sitting on the largest population and one of the largest economies on Earth, is making a multi-year bet in that same direction is, at minimum, a data point worth factoring into how ordinary savers think about protecting what they've already worked to build. Let's go back to where we started, to that quiet week in August when 20 tons of gold moved into a vault in Beijing. On the surface, it looked like a routine data release. Underneath it, it may represent something much bigger, a 21-month acceleration in sovereign gold buying, a possible unofficial buying program that could dwarf the official numbers, a global wave of central banks making the same quiet bet, and a U.S. economy showing fresh cracks that historically tend to favor the very asset China has been stockpiling. None of this guarantees what happens to gold prices next month, next year, or next decade. Markets are unpredictable, and anyone who tells you they know exactly what happens next is selling you certainty they don't actually have. But what we can say, based on verified data from China's own State Administration of Foreign Exchange, from the World Gold Council, and from major financial institutions tracking this story in real time, is that one of the most powerful financial institutions on Earth has been sending a signal consistently for 21 months. And that signal got louder, not quieter, the moment the crowd started doubting it. Sometimes the loudest financial stories aren't the ones shouted across headlines. They're the ones buried in a routine government filing, visible only to the people patient enough to actually read the numbers. If you learned something new today, make sure to subscribe to Money Insights, and like this video, more powerful financial insights are coming next.